Top of the hour now, you are live in the CNN Newsroom. I'm Pamela Brown in Washington on this Saturday. Well, he's been in office for less than a month, but President Donald Trump is already back on the campaign trail. He just wrapped up a rally in Florida just moments ago, and from the very beginning, he made it absolutely clear why he was there.
I'm here because I want to be among my friends and among the people. I also want to speak to you without the filter of the fake news.
All right, yesterday, Trump tweeted the press was the enemy of the American people. While he didn't use such strong words today, he did say this. All right, as we wait for that soundbite, here we go.
Honest media, which has published one false story after another, with no sources, even though they pretend they have them, they make them up in many cases. They just don't want to report the truth, and they've been calling us wrong now for 2 years. They don't get it, but they're starting to get it. I can tell you that. They've become a big part of the problem. They are part of the corrupt system.
All right, let's bring in the panel. Stephen Collinson, CNN Politics senior reporter, Julian Zelizer, historian and professor at Princeton University, Alice Stewart, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist, and Jeffrey Lord, conservative writer and former Reagan White House official. Stephen Collinson, what does this rally help more, Trump's morale or his approval rating?
I think most immediately, Pamela, it will help his morale. It's been a pretty tough month. It's a difficult place to be in a new White House that has been under siege, really, apart from what was a very sort of effective first week in office for the president. This, I think, in many ways was more like a speech of somebody that was running for office than who had already won the office. Clearly, Donald Trump was harking back to the campaign. He said something quite interesting, I think, to the reporters on Air Force One as he was taxiing into that rally. He said, life is a campaign. And I think that we're going to see the presidency as a campaign. This is a way for him, as he said, to sort of change the narrative, to get away from Washington, to be among the people who sent him to Washington, who sent him to the White House, and from whom he derives his power. There was a message there, I think, standing in front of that big crowd to Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, a reminder, if you like, of why the president was elected and the people he has behind him. However much we in Washington and the media might talk about a White House that is under siege and that is not functioning as well as the president says it is.
So on the heels of what you just said, Stephen, Jeffrey Lord, I mean, how much in your view was today's campaign rally, as the White House is calling it, about reassuring Donald Trump? You know, I think it's so interesting that when he holds these press conferences, he repeatedly talks about how many electoral college votes he got, reminding people that he won, and here's how many votes I've received. And then he has this big rally today where he continually puts down the media, among others. So how much of this is about Donald Trump being reassured in his first few weeks in the White House, or telling the American people, going straight to them and telling them, you know, what he thinks they want to hear?
I think it's the latter. I think he is communicating in his own fashion. President Obama did this 9 days earlier than this. In 2009, President Obama was in Elkhart, Indiana for his version of this, which was a televised town hall so he could push his stimulus program. Every president, every modern president does this differently. As I said, FDR sort of invented this with the fireside chat on radio. But let me just say that people like Gene Huber, whom we've just met tonight, I have met lots of these people here. This is here in the middle of Pennsylvania. I lived for a long time in Washington, and my friends in Washington, I have to say, thought I was crazy back in 2013 when I said that Donald Trump could win. It's because I was home, had long since moved home, and was listening to the Gene Hubers of the world with names like Steve and Alex and Lisa right here in Pennsylvania, and they were right. They got it. And I'm just suggesting that it's important to pay attention to these people. They're ignored too often when we have media analysis and all this kind of thing. I understand how all this works, but it's important to pay attention to these people. They did, in fact, elect the next president of the United States.
That is true, and that's why we had Gene Huber on to hear his perspective.
Exactly.
Wajahat, yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's important. You know, it's interesting because I noticed after the last press conference on Thursday, there were people saying, I feel like I live in an alternate universe. Jeffrey Lord, there were people like you saying, I thought it was great, everything he said. And then there were, you know, the other side, those who are opponents said, I can't believe that this is what he said. He's unhinged. I want to go to you, Wajahat Ali, contributor for the New York Times. He joins us now. What was your takeaway from today's campaign rally, as the White House is calling it?
Well, first of all, props to Gene. Maybe he can replace Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway. I'm glad he was enthusiastic. It'd be nice. I think there might be some vacancy there. And I really appreciate that Donald Trump used the Rolling Stones song, "You Can't Always Get What You Want," because right now he can't get favorability ratings or an efficient, effective government. And I think the real song should have been "Sympathy for the Devil," because the reason why he did this, and compared to Obama and FDR, who, by the way, Obama by this same time passed a federal stimulus package, which you might not like, but actually was very bold, and he actually legislated. Donald Trump is not legislating. He's not leading. What he's doing is, like you said, trying to create an enemy. And the enemy he's trying to create is the free press. And he's saying we're the enemy of the people. We're the opposition, according to Steve Bannon, who seems to be running the show. And apparently we are doing fake news by simply reporting the facts, reporting these Russia connections, which are extremely disturbing, reporting the fact that Michael Flynn lied, Donald Trump knew about it, sat on it for about a month, and then only after the Washington Post, again, the press, reported it, then he forced the resignation of Michael Flynn. So this is what the press is doing. We're not rolling over. We're not being state TV. And the fact that Trump did this, I think, is he's assuaging his insecurity, his anxiety, in what seems so far to be a very impotent administration that does not have a national security advisor.
Alice, I'm sure you have a few thoughts on what Wajahat just said. But Trump, President Trump did say he wanted to get past the media filter and speak directly to the people, but it also sounded like at times throughout that he was simply reiterating campaign promises. Now, he's only been in office less than a month, and so of course it takes a while to get things done and get your sea legs, but what was new in your view, and who did he reach out to besides his most faithful supporters today, Alice?
First and foremost, that was a priority, was to reach out to his faithful supporters. Look, the press and the fact checkers weren't the ones that voted for him. It was the Genes out there. It was the people like him that voted for him, and the president wanted to show his appreciation. Look, it's difficult to recall now, but back in the early stages of the Trump campaign, it was hard. It was a tough slog, and those people were in the foxhole with him, and he's very appreciative to their efforts to help get him elected, and that was part of what today was. And yes, there was a lot of repeating many of the same themes, such as securing the border and safe streets and repealing and replacing Obamacare. And as we said, before he got out of Air Force One, he had a gaggle with the press saying that, and the question was, why do you have these campaign events? He says, life's a campaign, making America great again is a campaign. And we're going to continue to see that, because part of also what he did, he moved the ball down the field on some of the things, talking about how he will refile an executive order on the travel ban. He gave us an update that the repeal and replace, we'll have more details on that in March. I think with regard to Syria, saying that he will create safe zones there until it's safe for people to leave, that's important. And to piggyback on Mike Pence's message today with regard to NATO, Mike Pence said that we are firmly standing behind NATO. Donald Trump says he's a fan of NATO, but at the same time, people need to pay more of their fair share with regard to NATO. So he did make some substantive policy messages today that will come out of that. At the same time, calling on House and Senate Democrats to work together to make a lot of these things happen, specifically Obamacare and an infrastructure package, which are key, that we have bipartisan input on that.
All right, Julian, listen to what Trump said, Mr. Trump said about past presidents' relationship with the press. Take a listen.
Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln, and many of our greatest presidents fought with the media and called them out, oftentimes on their lies.
Is that true, Julian?
Sure. Other presidents have called the press out. That's absolutely true. They've called out certain news organizations. They've tried to work around news organizations. But it's rare to see them attack the press as an institution and to put forward facts that are not true. And that's where there's more of not just an attack on the press, but a competition in terms of telling the story of what's going on. The story about the Electoral College and the popular vote, two claims that President Trump keeps making that aren't true, is actually going after the stories that the press has reported. So this is a wholesale attack on the media as an institution that's very different than the examples he talked about.
All right, Julian Zelizer, Stephen Collinson, Alice Stewart, Jeffrey Lord, Wajahat Ali, thank you so much. Stick around, a lot more to discuss.